I'm Stephen Seifert. Welcome to my Dulcimer Diary. It's February 28th, 2025. The dulcimers I own typically do not have a 1.5 fret. Terry McCafferty sent me this Seifert model to check out. It's got some new design ideas, but he included the 1.5 fret and the corresponding 8.5. So I think this is a good time to show you what I think's cool about the 1.5 fret. I'm in DAD tuning, and I guess, we're so used to playing the keys of D, G, and A. If you try to play in the key of C on a normal dulcimer, you end up falling short a little bit. The 1.5 really makes playing in the key of C great, especially if you're playing chords. You get this nice C chord down here near the nut. You also get this F major, which is great. Not only do you get the G chord you're used to, but you get a G7. And with those three chords, you can do a lot of stuff, Very handy. And there's some other chords that you get near the nut that make playing in the key of C a little more convenient. You get a nice A minor. You get a D minor, an E minor. You're already used to that. But it puts everything right here together. G7. C. D minor, G7, C. So it's great for all that. There's some fancy chords for the key of C. In the key of C, we're used to having an A7 we can get, but this gives you an A augmented 7, which is nice. An A7 with a sharp 5. We also get a D7 chord, something we're not used to having near the nut. There's that G again, G7. So with these chords, you can really get some neat tunes. Pretty cool. I think that melody work, you can start to get some interesting melodies here. We're used to being in the key of D major. Down here near the nut. With this 1.5 fret, you can get an F instead of the F sharp. And you get a C natural on the middle string right there. That's pretty cool. Not exactly the chords I was looking for, but the chords I got. You get some neat effects you can throw in. Think of bottom cabbage. Well, one thing that's neat is instead of starting on the 2, start on a 1.5 and quickly slide into the 2. It's kind of neat. So I like that. Some people don't like sliding from 1 to 2 with a 1.5 fret. I've always loved it. It's a beautiful sound. Reminds me of James Taylor. Some of that stuff. I love it. You get some neat bluegrass things you can do down here. So you get your D major. But you also get D mixolydian. Now we can do that on a regular dulcimer, but it just gets it all right here, where your hand already is. You also get a D minor pentatonic. If you put a little bend on some of those, barely bend. Sounds. But some of these bluegrass licks are neat. Stuff like that. So it's nice having all that stuff. Now, I went through a period where I used the 1.5 quite a bit. I had a regular dulcimer with a 6.5, and then I got a dulcimer with a 1.5, and I loved it. Loved exploring all this kind of stuff. Then I ended up with a chromatic dulcimer, and that gave me all the extra notes. Then I met David Schnaufer, and he just had a regular dulcimer, 6.5, no 1.5. And so I got back into that headspace, and I got a McSpadden that had that. So the first 2 were Bill Berg's, then I had a Blue Lion, then the McSpadden with David. And David, he was really good about capoing around, adding all the cool stuff that each capo position gives you. And then he would even alter the tunings and use capos. So there's plenty for me to explore there. And I didn't have the 1.5 around. I had the chromatic, always running in the background usually. But for festival work, and really a lot of my own personal playing time, I've just always enjoyed the regular dulcimer with the 6.5. I met Don Petty, and I saw what he was doing. And at the time, he had a 1.5 and an 8.5, as well as the 6.5. And he said he didn't use the 1.5 much, but he did use the 8.5. And I've even seen him with dulcimers where it had the 6.5 and the 8.5, but no 1.5. So he was doing alternate tunings, a lot of drone playing, and some of those old timey tunes really benefit from having this 8.5 fret. And I think if you tune to G, so tune to D, G, D. You can play in G, but you get this F note in there. So that gives you G mixolydian. What am I playing? Is that greasy string? Just popped into my head. Now I was using the 1.5 there, but there's the kind of dulcimer playing where you use lots of chords while you're playing melody. And then there's the kind of dulcimer playing where you don't use chords. It's a lot of drone. And it's fun to explore the different tunings, to play in different keys and types of keys. Well, having the 1.5 and 8.5, it just makes all that happen a little easier. And I always thought it was cool. Here's Don, kind of the more traditional player, of all of us who play mountain dulcimer. And yet he's got the extra frets, I don't think having the extra frets makes the instrument impure. Paul Orts, a very good musician, who's married to Karen Ashbrook, and they play together a lot. He plays every instrument, really. But there's a musical instrument museum in Belgium where he's from, and he sent me a book from that museum that's all about drone zithers, table zithers, dulcimer-like objects, DLOs, I call them. And looking through this book, it's fascinating how many instruments aren't purely diatonic and how old they are. So most of them don't have extra frets, And on here, it's like no 1.5, no 6.5. That's the way a lot of old zithers are. But you look at these fingerboards, and some of them have the 6.5, and some of them also have the 1.5. And I don't just mean one. It's a good number of them. Some of them have all the frets. And if you look at a lot of the old instruments around the planet that are the instruments that came before the American mountain dulcimer, the Appalachian dulcimer, it looks like they weren't afraid to add an extra note now and then. And, just think about it. You live in an apartment, and you decide you want to put an extra lock on the door. You put it on there. Why would adding a note be any different? Like there's some kind of religious rule against it, I think musicians often would add a note when they needed it. And if it could be added with some fancy technique, maybe, like Bonnie Russell adding a note on John Hardy, using her noter on the Gaelic style dulcimer. She had a way of adding a note, I believe. Or just adding extra frets. And the Hungarians, they had primarily diatonic instrument, and they ended up adding extra frets over on another set of melody strings. So they're able to keep the diatonic section pure. And then right next to that, you've got all the missing notes, which is a cool system. But I'll tell you, for my mind, I love playing a dulcimer with no half frets. No 6.5, no 1.5. And the way that feels, emotionally, mentally, it's a special place. Now, you add the 6.5 fret, and it doesn't really compromise it that much. Plus, I'm used to it. And you really get some versatility with that extra fret. You add the 1.5 fret, you start pushing it. But it's still, you still get some nice slides. The more slides you do, the more you'll appreciate this. But with a chromatic instrument with all the extra frets, when you slide, you don't hear little scale fragments. Little sections of the major scale. You get that mostly with diatonically fretted instruments where there's no half frets. And we use that to our advantage because ergonomically, these instruments, I do think they're difficult in some ways compared to others. And we do so much left and right movement. Being able to slide and hear a scale is fantastic. You add the 6.5 fret, you still get most of that. You add the 1.5, you still kind of do get it. but it's starting to change. Then you add all the frets and you've lost it, you know. But these instruments, I always like to remind people, I think the best way to be honest with these things is to keep them useful for you, to serve your purposes. I know we stand on the shoulders of giants, you know, and I enjoy exploring the foundations and the traditions of our instrument. But I think part of the foundations and the traditions is the innovations that do pop up all over the earth throughout centuries of humanity. So when my mom first wanted to get a dulcimer, I didn't have a 1.5 at that point. I had it before, but I joined David, and I just wanted to do things his way. My mom asked me if she should get a 1.5 or not, and I said, well, it's a little harder, but not much, and it'll allow you to do some extra chords and some fancy things. Do you want to try it? She said, yeah, I want to try it. Well, get it. You know, it's all. Why am I going on and on about this? Because there's pressures. There's some people that say all dulcimers should have a 1.5. Well, can we just not do any of that? Can we not come up with some rule about it all? Enjoy this instrument on your own terms. Now, we do function in community, and we do function in time, and history matters, but I hate to quote this in every video, but Gene Ritchie, the dulcimer for me has always been the perfect accompaniment to the more important things in life. If I say it every video, it's still not enough. It's important to me. I believe in that. You know? So, think about if you had a few different horses, and they have different personalities, different strengths and weaknesses. You've got one that's great, you know, over here in the field, especially with a beginning rider, and you have another horse that's good for going up into the Rocky Mountains or something, you know. I like to think of dulcimers like that. Where are we? DGD? Let me get back to DAD. One of my favorite YouTubers, Rick Beato, he said, you know, he's one of the most popular music channels. That's not just something like Justin Bieber or Taylor Swift or something, you know, where they're mostly just doing music videos. He talks and has guests on and teaches and plays and all kinds of stuff. But he said he's had over 2 billion views on his YouTube channel since he started. And he said the trends are, especially nowadays, in particular with the younger audience, and I don't know if that means everyone younger than 26 or what it is, but he said that they have an attention span of 35 seconds. You know, that if you make a video longer than 35 seconds, they're often they're out of there. And I don't want to be a part of that culture. I have said this before, I'll say it again. I have enjoyed sitting in kitchens with musicians in their homes and very much enjoyed that. I miss when people would get together more often. We needed each other more. You know, now you've got your phone and I'm on it. You know. But I like movies that are slow. High Plains Drifter. There's some slow parts to that film, you know. But when you're sitting in a kitchen with someone, it's not a high intensity all the time. I don't want to live like that. So that's what I'm doing here. If you've made it this far, maybe you know what I'm talking about. That's what I like about doing these particular videos. And that's why they're free. You know, I don't know that I'd want to charge for this, just for this at all. I've often said this is for me. I like it. Yes, I wish we had people getting together more often. But this is, we'll take community wherever we can find it, I think. I will. DAD. So there's other tunings. Now here's another thing. You can capo. You can capo with the 1.5 and get some cool stuff. Let's do a moment on that. And hey, if you've had enough for the day, you can always hit pause and come back some other time. If you capo past the 1.5 fret, of course you won't be able to use it. But you do get the benefit of the 8.5 up there. So if I capo at 1, I'm used to having... Well, you also get this F major. So you get a little bit of a Phrygian feel there, and I think that's kind of neat. And you get some chords, E minor, and then you can get an F sharp minor 7 flat 5 sound, and then a fake B7. A major, A minor, E minor. That's one of the coolest moves in this tuning, capoed at 1 with the 1.5. You're playing an E minor. You can go to an E7, and then you go to an A minor, and then an A major, and then a B. You know, there's just some neat things you can do there. If you capo at 1.5, you might be tempted to think you could play in the key of F, and you kind of can, but you have no B flats. And as long as you don't need a B flat, you're doing fine. If you need a 4 chord, just put this 3 on the middle. That's a neat sound. You know, you actually get part of a B flat major and a B flat minor without a B flat, but well, you could certainly do enough with that. Now, at this point, when you start capoing, you're talking about using just the 8.5, and I think that puts you in kind of the frame of mind Don Petty might have been thinking in. If you capo at 4, this is kind of neat. You get A minor. And usually you don't get an A minor when you capo at 4. You get A Dorian or some other scales. You get that nice D minor. You get an E, A, D, E. Love all that. And in the key of A major, you could do a D and then a D minor, A. Plenty of cool things. So I suggest, if you're interested, I would tell you what I told my mother. If you want to try it and you're up for a little adventure, give it a shot. If you're lucky enough to be able to have more than one dulcimer, well, I wouldn't add a 1.5 fret to your main instrument unless you kind of have to. But if you have the luxury, get another instrument with a 1.5, because I really like not having it as well as I like having it. And that is true of this phone. I like having it, but I also like not having it. I think it's good to have both in your life. I'm going to play a little bit and let you go. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Maybe I had to get some of that off my chest.